finally got 5 minutes peace and quiet to do another vlog. Wow, it's been a busy few weeks. I did my first conference on Friday with IDAS in Barnsley, and yeah, it was really well attended, and it was really good. I was a bit nervous when I started, but by the time I sort of finished the presentation, I probably could have gone on for another half an hour, to be honest. So really looking forward to getting the opportunity to do it again. I hope it was really well received. I got lots of really positive comments afterwards, yeah, so looking forward to doing it again. But I wanted to talk. I had a conversation with a friend a few weeks ago, and I just wanted to kind of talk about what domestic abuse really is, because I think we all have, or we were all given this image, you know, years back, of battered women. There was these posters with women with black eyes and cut faces, and that was kind of the image that we were given of what domestic abuse is. But the reality is actually something very different, and I can actually talk quite confidently about it, because I was in what was a very abusive relationship, but not physically abusive. It was a very, very controlling relationship. So we talk about coercive control. And I was having this conversation with a friend, and she was really shocked that I'd been in that situation, because from the outside looking in, I come across as somebody who's quite, oh hello bubbles, I come across as somebody who's quite forthright, and I can stand up in front of a room of people and speak, and I can hold my own. So this image of what, I don't know, what people expect a woman who's, or a man who's living in that kind of relationship to be like, I'm not really sure what they expect. So I just wanted to sort of talk about that really. And there's lots of sort of different, and you know, obviously I'm not an expert on this, there are lots of experts out there, but I can certainly talk with confidence about what happened to me. And I think, you know, I'm going to talk about men because obviously I'm a woman, and my relationship was with a man, but obviously this equally goes for any relationship. And I don't want people to sort of think you know, it's all men and women, because it's not. But they, I don't know, he seemed to have this ability to find somebody who was probably feeling a little bit insecure and vulnerable, and he I suppose he took an opportunity there. He kind of, I suppose, built me up and made me feel really good about myself, and he, you know, he was kind of everything I was looking for. He had his own home, he had a good job. From the outside, he looked, you know, he was a good looking guy, really, you know, really nice. And so I thought, you know, yeah, okay, this is great. And it was the same for Natalie. You know, outwardly, Paul was this, you know, he seemed like he was, you know, really caring towards the children. He was, he had a nice house, he had a good job. And it's only when you start to pick away at that, you realise that there was other stuff going on. And for me, now I can look back, and I genuinely at the time didn't understand what I was living with. I didn't. And it's only since this has all happened with Natalie, and hearing other people talk, and I'm like, my God, I was doing all of those things. I was living that, and I had no idea. So how do we expect the police and, you know, other services to, if you don't really understand what you're living with, how do we expect somebody else to walk in and just say, right, this is happening? You know, it's very difficult. But I went sort of, you know, I was very lucky, and I had a very good social circle, and I would go out with my friends. And by the end of that relationship, I was barely leaving the house, and I was frightened. And although he'd never actually hit me, I don't know, it was it was frightened of the interrogations and what would come at the end of the day when he came home from work. And there's a couple of things that really stick in my mind. Sort of taking control of the money. You know, he was very everything was very, very money orientated, and so he wanted control of that, which I was fortunate, and I never fully allowed that to happen, which allowed me to be able to get out of that situation. But obviously, you know, my sister, you know, I think back, and she never had any money. She worked, but she never had any money. She was always sort of asked, you know, relying on me or Kerry when we went out for, you know, she'd have a very minimal amount in her purse and never seemed to have any. And I can remember we did sort of have this discussion once about, she'd been on holiday with Kerry and taken virtually nothing with her in terms of money to buy food and things, and so Kerry ended up doing it, which you don't mind, you know, if people, you know, everyone has short months, don't they? But it's, yeah, looking back, it was all the time. So that was one element of it. Another element, I suppose, was around what I would call cyber stalking almost. I mean, the guy that I'm talking about, for me personally, he, I didn't at the time, I didn't have passwords and things on my phone because I don't have anything to hide, so I you know, anyone could look on my phone. It really didn't bother me because I was not embarrassed by what was on there. And yeah, he would constantly be checking my phone, and I didn't realise to start with what he was actually doing. And it was only he accessed my Facebook account, and he deleted all the mails off my Facebook account. He'd gone through all of my emails, and I got, like, I can only describe it as an interrogation. I mean, literally short of a lamp shining down on me, questioning where I'd been, who I'd spoken to, every day. And he did this with these emails, and he literally had the computer, and he's like, right, who is this? What is this for? You know, and it went down this list. And they're coming away from that thinking, wow, what was that all about? You know, it's a bit odd. But just thinking, oh, he's just looking out for me. He's just making sure everything's okay. And you kind of make excuses. And then there was, say, checking my phone. I can remember this particular day. I'd been, it was really odd. I walked out of the room and I came back in and I saw my phone flash, and I said to him, have you just checked my phone? And he said, oh, I'm sorry, I just couldn't help myself. And I'm like, well, what are you expecting to find on there? I haven't got anything to hide. It doesn't have a password on it, so why do you feel the need to check it? And then there was another day where he'd obviously checked it again, and it was my birthday, and a friend, and he was just a friend, had just sent me a birthday message saying, happy birthday, hope you're having a great day. There was nothing in it. It was just somebody that lived very close by on one of the other farms just sent me a message to wish me happy birthday. And that resulted in I mean, it was just an interrogation again, and it just felt like you were being worn down. Yeah, just worn down. Just this, you know, they talk about a dripping tap, know your water torture type thing. It was that. That's probably the best way of describing it. It was just this constant drip, 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 to the point where you just think, I can't cope with this anymore. What is going on? I just can't cope with this anymore. And then there were things like, he didn't want me to speak to my ex-husband. I'm very fortunate in that I have a very good relationship with my ex-husband, and we have always managed to organise things for the children and have kept our relationship positive for them, because I don't ever want my children to grow up with conflict. And I'm fortunate that I was able to do that, and I know it's not the case for everybody, but he really made that difficult, because he wouldn't allow me to. He said, anything has to go through me. And again, I thought, well, you know, he's trying to look out for me, and you know, perhaps I should be angrier about what happened, and you know, I should, but actually it wasn't. It was about his insecurities. But at the time I didn't see that. Thankfully, you know, my ex-husband and I have, you know, managed to not let that interfere, and we've continued to just, you know, with the children as we did before. But yeah, that could very easily have made life incredibly difficult for my girls as well. Then there was like I've spoken about this before, but I had a one of the guys at the school. He used to do landscape gardening, and he wasn't allowed to park his big flatbed truck on the estate where they lived. So we were talking, and he said, "Oh, I'm having a nightmare. I've got to find somewhere to keep it." So I said, "Look, there's a massive hard standing at the back of our farm. It's all secure. Bung it on there, not a problem." And he said, "Well, I'll tell you what. If I'm allowed to stick it out there, I'll mow your front lawn for you." And I was like, brilliant, because I hate mowing lawns. And he'd been doing that for quite a while. He'd just, you know, he'd come once a week and just run the mower over my front lawn, and in exchange he parked his flatbed round the back of our barn. And yeah, and I always just take him a jug of juice out or a cup of tea or whatever, and then I'd carry on with my jobs. You know, our kids went to school together, and again, there was nothing in it. But he made that incredibly difficult, because I would get questioned about what we'd spoken about, how long he was there, why did I feel the need to go out and speak to him, why he was there to cut the lawn, why did I need to go out and speak to him. And it got to the point, and this was very close to the point where I managed to, you know, end the relationship and I suppose realise what I was living with. But this particular day, he'd turned up early. The guy that was mowing the lawn, he turned up early, and this just terrible fear of, oh, if I go out, or if he sees me, or if I acknowledge that I've seen him, I'm going to get this interrogation. And I just remember I just dropped to the floor in the living room. It was like a big bay window in the living room. I just dropped to the floor and I laid underneath that radiator for the best part of half an hour while he was cutting the lawn, just too frightened to move. And that's, I think people find it really, you know, well, why, he never hit you. No, he didn't hit me, but what he did was reduce me to that. He reduced me to this cowering wreck under a radiator, under a window, because I was too frightened to just go out and say hi to somebody. There was another day that I went to the yard where I used to keep my horse, but I was talking to a few of the girls, and their husbands were there, and I can remember that was kind of the first point I thought, God, what are you doing? That night he sort of said, "Oh, where have you been?" And I was very careful about what I said. I told him that I'd been to the yard, and I told him that I'd seen two of my friends down there, but I completely omitted the fact that their husbands were there, because I knew that would be like a red flag to a bull. I knew that would be the thing that sent him into this just tirade of abuse and questioning. Just things like, I couldn't go to the shower on my own. He would follow me to the shower, and I couldn't leave until he'd had his shower. I had to sit on the toilet and wait for him to finish. And it was, sometimes it can be nice to, sit in a bath together or whatever, and as long as you don't get the tap end, I suppose. But it's not something that it's not healthy for it to be all the time. You need your own space, and I wasn't allowed that. I wasn't allowed to be out of his sight when he was at home. There was another day, we were fixing the floor in the wagon. We had a horse box, and some of the flooring needed replacing, so we were doing that. And I just quite innocently popped off to the loo and when I came back, wow, you should have heard it. It was just incredible. Where have you been? I was like, I just went to the toilet. Well, why didn't you tell me? Well, why on earth would you tell somebody when you're at home that you're just popping to the loo? You know what I mean? Jeez. But all these things afterwards, I'm like, wow, you know, I just didn't see it. I just didn't see it at the time. I just didn't see it. And I think for Natalie, that's what she was living with. I think that's how she was living. She was just living it each day, trying to keep things as calm and as stress-free as possible. And just some of the ways that I think she did that was by not leaving the children at home. She always took them everywhere with her, so that she never left him, you know, and just comments that were made around, oh, he, you know, if one of the children was perhaps misbehaving or something, oh, I'll just take them round to my mum's, because it was easier than staying and having to deal with what was going on. But I just, yeah, I think it's very hard for people to understand, you know, when you talk about domestic abuse, it's not just about bruises. It's so much more than that. It's so much more than that. And like I say, from living with it firsthand and seeing, there's so many similarities between what my sister was living with and what I lived with. And I just think, God, it could just as easily have been me. It could just as easily have been me that, you know, that we were all talking about now, and not my sister, because it was all there, all the signs were there, and I just missed it. I just totally didn't, until it got really bad, until I started to feel ill and got quite, I suppose it was like anxious and stress. I think it was probably stress, and I'm not a poorly person, but suddenly I found myself just feeling sick all the time, and it wasn't a good place to be. Really wasn't a good place to be. And I'm sure there are, you know, lots of other women out there that can relate to the things that I've just talked about. You know, just little things that you, at the time, you're not probably, you know that it's there, but you just think, oh, it's okay. But then when you look back, you just think, God, what was I living with? You know, what on earth? You know, it's not good, not good. No, I'll leave it there for today anyway, and then I will try and find these letters. I'm searching desperately for them at the minute. I don't know what I've done with them. So, right, bye.